I'm Jenny Kwan. I'm the Member of Parliament for Vancouver East, and I'm with the NDP. Well, it's a long story, but I'll keep it short. I started out as a community legal advocate in the downtown east side. And in 1993, the federal Liberal government canceled the National Affordable Housing Program. And it basically made me go wild because I was working day in and day out, trying to help people to secure housing to ensure that their rights are protected. And then all of a sudden, the government just decided to get rid of a national housing program that was desperately needed for people in the community. And so at that time, we were fighting against gentrification as well. People were getting displaced in the community. And these are the most marginalized people, low-income people, seniors. And so I just saw red. And I protested, I did petitions, I did all of those things. And then finally, people say, you know what you need to do is bring your voice to the powers of and the decision-making tables and get inside and to bring the voices of the people to those tables to try and make a change. And so then I entered into electoral politics, first ran for a city council and was elected in 1993 as the youngest councillor in the city of Vancouver. And then subsequently I was elected provincially and then now, of course, federally. There are many moments, but every day, you wake up and you think, what is the purpose here? You're fighting for people. I'm fighting for people. I'm from East Van. This is what I do. And so, there are moments when something that doesn't even surface in the radar for the broader public, when you get a change in people's lives, that will impact them positively. It could be a policy change, it could be casework. All of those moments count so much. So I'll tell you, I was elected in 2015 federally as a member of parliament. And an issue that I've been working on for decades, and that is to ensure that migrant workers, and particularly caregivers, have rights, that they are protected, that they're recognized and valued in our Canadian society, in our immigration system. And what happened was that these caregivers had been waiting and waiting to reunite with their families. The policy is such that they're required to leave their families behind to come and take care of Canadian families, for our children, for our elderly, for the disabled, and for our seniors. And meanwhile, they're separated from their loved ones, and sometimes for as long as 10 years to try and reunite with them. It breaks families, it's just absolutely devastating. So I put my mind to trying to address that issue, and with relentless pressure on the government, endless press conferences right in the minister's backyard, and so on. And then the minister finally made a change in policy, and he announced that he will now set a standard for processing of permanent residence applications for caregivers to 12 months. So within a year, people will get their application processed. And in that announcement, the minister cited the cases that I brought to the public's attention, that I brought to the government's attention, that I brought to the minister's attention, and brought to committee as well. And that is a moment that I will never forget, how significant that is for the people who are waiting for their application to be processed and to be able to reunite with their loved ones. Now, of course, that's not all the things that I wanted. I wanted to do more, and really what I want is for migrant workers to have the right to have landed status on arrival. So that is work that I will continue to do, but meanwhile, at least we've shortened the time for processing, and at least some of the families would be able to see their loved ones, hopefully within that processing timeline. I entered into politics as a community legal advocate. And what do I want to do? I want to make change. I still remember back in the day when I first landed my job as a community legal advocate. And in that interview, my mentor the former Jim Green from the Downtown East Side, a phenomenal advocate and organizer in the community. And he asked me this question, what did you want to do? Why do you want this job? And I said, I want to do this because I want to change the world. Because everybody deserves the rights to be represented and to have their rights respected. And there are times where people don't even know what those rights are. So we need to make those changes. And their voice needs to be heard. They need to be seen and they need to be valued. And so that's what gets me up every day. It is making sure that those voices are heard to affect the kind of change that matters for people. And for too long, in the House of Commons, in the corridors of power, it is always representing one side. It is always the power and the well-connected. Everyone else is always forgotten. And so for me, it is to make sure that everyone else that is often not in the corridors of power are not forgotten, that their voice matters, that they deserve to be represented and respected. And we all deserve to be in a society where we can live with dignity, where we can just be who we are and have those opportunities to thrive. And that's sort of what gets me up every day. You know, I want to see those changes. I'm not happy with where things are at, and better is possible. I fundamentally believe it. And for me to sit here as an elected, I think about every day the people before me, the women before me, the people from the visible minority communities who suffer so much, the indignities, the discrimination, that every day they got up to fight for those rights. And I benefited from it. That's why I'm sitting here as a member of parliament, where once upon a time women weren't even recognized as persons, where once upon a time ethnic minorities did not have the right to vote. But I benefit from that, and I will never forget what that means and the privilege that I have in this position and what I'm doing with it, what I need to do with it. And finally, I'll close with this. With when I first got elected, the late Dr. David Lamb, who was the Lieutenant Governor in British Columbia, said to me, you know, a lot of people run for office. And he said, always remember this as your guiding principles. And he said, it is not the position that brings you honor, is what you do to the position that honors you. And so I live with that every day, and I work, you know, day in and day out to remember why I'm here. I'm here because I'm here to bring the voices of the people to the table, to fight for change, and to make sure that especially those who are most marginalized are not forgotten. I'll say this, I did not realize how much of your life actually is on the public record. In fact, everything about you is on the public record. I try really hard to shield my children from it. They did not seek this life. And so, you know, and there are moments where, on the negative side, people will attack you, but there are some people who will take that attack and take it to your family. And I've had people show up my house to threaten my children, to say that I'm gonna come after you, to my toddlers. And you know, I had never ever thought that would happen, ever, for anyone, but there it was, it happened. And for me, that's very difficult to take. I get it that I am a public figure and people will come after me on policy, but sadly, of course, that doesn't happen just on policy. They attack me for my gender, they attack me for my age, they attack me for my ethnicity, they attack me, you know, and they hurl hate at me. During the COVID period, I had people say, it's the Kwan disease. They call COVID the Kwan disease. Like, honestly, right? But those are the kinds of things that is horrible. And I thought, you know, it's not okay, but that's what they do. But then they take it to another level, to attack your family, to show up in your home and threaten them. That is just too much. And that I never thought would happen in this journey, but yet it is. And I know I'm not the only one. Many other people experience this as well. And I don't think that's good for democracy and is not good for anyone. But sadly, that's also our reality. I think there's a lot of toxicity in democracy today. I'm really sad about that. And there's a lot of disinformation. I think that sometimes some parties will use an issue, not so much on the issue to try and get things onto the right track, but for political gain, for their own personal political gain or their party's political gain. And when you do that, it does a disservice to democracy. It doesn't actually help advance the issue. You know, this sort of political posturing gets us nowhere. Now, I know that there are moments when that happens. I get it, but it shouldn't dominate and be the order of the day all the time. And yet that's what I see. And the more we get down into that road, the more you steer away from the democratic process, the more people will see that this is all just a big joke and people don't take it seriously. And when that happens, you do long-term damage to the political system, to our democratic system. Right now, we're dealing with foreign interference as well. And we need to address that in a serious way, in a nonpartisan way. But it's been so hyped up, that over the charts hyped up, that it's almost lost in terms of what the issues are, right? And what is at risk? Our democratic institutions are at risk. So we can't afford to play the level of political games that people do with the issue. I wish that we can just dial it back, just take a breath and dial it back. Remember why we came to this table. It's not just to have a political fight, it's to get things done. So let's find that path, and I think that's where, the toxicity, I think, is doing such damage to our democratic system. It discourages people. It makes people feel like, what is the point? They're all the same, and people will just smear you with the same brush. And when that happens, it is detrimental to our democratic system. And it's not a personal thing, it is the overall thing. And we need to redouble our effort to make sure that people are engaged and that people care about what happens, that they understand the role of electeds. And electeds need to understand their role in that position and use that position to do something. In the words of Dr. David Lam, honor that position, not the other way around. There's been many times that I work across party lines to achieve a common goal, whether it is Liberals or Conservatives. I'll give you an example, just most recently, actually, in the last budget. And so, one of the issues that I've been working hard on and pushing is to address the housing affordability crisis. We know that many people are struggling, with COVID, with inflationary costs and so on. So we pushed the government, and we were able to force the government to take action in coming up with a housing benefit, an additional one-time $500 housing benefit for low-income people. Now, there's a set of criteria that would be required for people to meet the eligibility. And some of those things were a bit off. Now, we couldn't get everything we wanted, but we were able to get a few amendments to that policy through legislation. And normally, amending a budget legislation is impossible for an opposition member. It just doesn't happen because it's a money matter. They will deem it out of scope, and then it will not even hit the floor. But in that instance, I was able to work collaboratively with the Liberals, and they agreed to my amendments. And so ultimately, those amendments were adopted, and the government, in fact, the minister had to introduce those amendments as a royal recommendation and for it to go through. So that would be one example. There are other examples. I talked earlier about changing policies in immigration. In another instance, this was actually the first bill when I was elected in 2015 that the government introduced, and it was an immigration bill. And I moved an amendment to ensure that those who are stateless, and particularly for youth, that they're not forgotten, that there's a process for them to gain status here in Canada. So that was an amendment that I had moved, and through collaboration with all parties. I had the Liberals and the Conservatives voting in support of that amendment, and that became part of a government bill. And so those are the things that I work on every day. I think about how it can affect change. Some of it is covered by the media, some of it is not, but irrespective, it makes a big difference in the lives of the people. In the case of the immigration situation, later on I was at a meeting with an organization in Quebec, and a lawyer there said to me, by the way, MP Kwan, I just want you to know that policy change that you made for youth on statelessness, I utilized that for a client of mine, and they're now safe here in Canada. I just thought like, wow, it's so good to know. And every day I have to remind myself, and for us as parliamentarians to know this, the policy changes that we're fighting for is not a number for someone. There, in every policy, there are faces behind it. There are people and real lives. And we have to remember that. And when we push for those change, that's what it means. It affects people's lives, and it matters that much. And so, it was very rewarding to know that you do these things, it matters, and it's most effective when we work collaboratively. And we're seeing this now in a minority government, and the NDP is pushing the government on a variety of things, including healthcare change, dental care changes, labor changes, anti-scab legislation. All of those things are working through hard work and collaboration. And finally, I'll close with this, and I'm very proud of this moment. We got in the last budget for the government to put in recognition for urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing for people who are away from their home communities. $300 million to address that. Not enough, and I'm pushing for more in this upcoming budget. I hope to see that there's something more in terms of a long-term program, but that's also working through collaboration with the Liberal government to bring change to the people. What gives me hope to the next generation is that the next generation, young people today, are incredibly engaged. They are fighting for their voice to be heard, and they are fighting for issues to be on the agenda. Think back prior to COVID, there were such tremendous effort from young people on the climate crisis. People took to the streets, and I have never seen such an enormous and passionate fight for Mother Earth. And people came out in droves and got generations of people to come out across the board, across the spectrum, coming out to support that. That actually came from young people. They fought for this and put this on the agenda. So that gives me so much hope that despite the toxicity, not everyone has been pushed away, and those who are fighting through it and to say, no, our future is too important, that our collective future is too important. And that just makes me feel like, no, don't give up, because the young people are fighting it. Their voice are getting heard. The fact that we're here talking to each other makes a difference. And so every day I look at young people and I think there is hope. And I think about the fight that people have in the downtown east side, for me in my home riding, where things are so challenged. Survival is a thing that they have to struggle with every day. But the fact that they get up every day to fight that fight, not just for themselves, but for others like them, and making a difference, not just for Vancouver East, but across the country, that gives me so much hope to know that humanity exists, that people care and they're passionate about it, and they won't give up. Don't give up and believe in yourself. Once upon a time, I was a very shy person, and I would never speak out publicly. But through my work in the community, I found my voice. I found my political identity. I saw the people who were struggling, and I identified with them. I remembered when I first came here as a child, as an immigrant child. We're a low-income family. We barely survived. And I wasn't that confident, but now I think believe in yourself. That is the most important thing. Find what you're passionate about and go for it. And you're not alone. You're never alone. And there are others who think just like you, who want to fight those fights. And network with them, find them, connect with each other, and band together. Together, your voice is enormous and it is strong. And take it forward. Don't ever let anyone tell you it can't be done.